Hello and welcome to A Can or Not, a podcast where we think and talk about issues we face as Christians and if we can handle them or not. I'm your host, Xian, and today we have my brother and sister in Christ, Desmond and Florence, to talk about this question. Can you date a non-Christian or not? So Florence, do you think Christians can date non-Christians?
Biblically is a no, because in 2 Corinthians 6 verse 14 to 18, Paul commanded to the Corinthians say that not to be equally yoked with unbelievers. Light and darkness cannot be in fellowship. But however, I felt like it also depends on the girl and the guy, whether they want to date a non-Christian or not. Because for what I see is that girl usually it's easier for a girl to believe in Christ when the guy is a Christian. Whereas when the girl is a Christian, it's a bit difficult for the guy to be a believer, because I feel like because the guy is the head, right? So they kind of like, lead the girl to, the girl's supposed to follow the guy in some ways. But then for girls as a Christian and then the guy follow is a bit difficult. Whereas when a Christian girl falls in love with a guy, it seems like they will move away from God because they focus on the guy too much. And then slowly it tends to be very, very difficult when a girl dates a non-Christian. That is my perspective.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So your answer based on the verses is that they shouldn't, but then you, on your own opinion and experiences, you think that the gender, depending on whether it's a girl or a guy, that kind of gives you a different option. You think it's worse if a Christian girl dates a non-Christian guy versus a non-Christian girl dating a Christian guy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But
Desmond, because I have a friend who.
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who is a Christian, who is a girl. She dated a non-Christian guy, and then he's very caring and a nice guy. That's why my friend followed him. But then he was very persistent, saying that don't ask me to go to church. But then the girl also didn't force him, but slowly she drifted away from God, and then she kind of just followed the guy to, I don't know, believe in what.
Yeah, so I also have stories of people where the male who is non-Christian or from another religion who follow the girl instead. So that's my opposite experience. Like to me, the gender doesn't matter. But Desmond, what do you think? Do you think Christian can date non-Christians?
For me, it begins with the notion of dating. So it depends on what's your objective of dating. So if you ask me, my take is that dating is really for marriage. But if your definition of dating is just to get to know another person, it doesn't matter whether the person is a believer or non-believer. You can go all out and go get to know the person, go have a meal together or things like that. Even if a person of the opposite gender is fine. But if you talk about dating, then to me is that dating, I only reserve it, for marriage. So if I say when I go on a date with a girl, is with the intention of getting married. So if you're talking about the intention of getting married, then I would say it's not only about Christian or non-Christian. It's actually more than that, because if you're talking about marriage, then it's much more. You have to consider more things, because whether this person can go in the same direction of life that you want to go with. So I think it depends very much on what do you mean by date. Yeah.
Okay. But then, so do you think it's okay, or do you think it's not okay just because the intention is for marriage to you? So by your definition, you think that it should happen, or it still can happen?
I think if you are talking about dating for marriage, one thing I'll consider for another person is that the other person who's I'm dating is, would this person be able to go on the same direction in life as I want to? So by saying that, it means a few things. One is, I need to know who am I, what's my identity, and what's my direction in life. And for me, when I decide to start to date other people, I already know my identity, and I know that one thing in my life that is I wanted to follow Christ. And with that, that's a direction in life that I want to take. And for me, I decided I will follow Christ until the end of my life, right? So I need to find someone who can meet that direction. And this dating thing, in my own experience, is not only, even sometimes that people claim that they are Christians. And when I start to date them, and I realize that, yeah, they might claim they are Christians, but they are not going in the same direction in life. Not to say not that. I think sometimes it's like they don't even go to church, for example. And if for me, if I want to live that kind of life as a Christian, it will mean that it needs me to go to church. Not to say it needs me to go to church. I want to go to church. I want to do things that pleases my Lord, like understanding the Bible, going for Bible studies, understanding the Bible, understanding how the word in Bible applies to my life. So I find it very hard to find the same direction, sometimes even among people who claim they're Christians. It's not only about Christians or non-Christians sometimes. So I believe it will be even harder to find the same direction in terms of marriage between a Christian and non-Christian, because it's not only a spiritual beliefs, but it's also the values in life. How do we want to live our life? So it comes down to like, how do we want to spend our time? How do we want to, what activities we want to do, or what activities we think is worth doing? It depends on the values. And all these values, for me, is grounded by the scripture and by what Christ has done for us on the cross. And if I can't find that person that could live in that same direction, I think it's very, very hard for marriage.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you brought up two things. One, definition of dating, like, what's the intention behind that dating? And also, second point is your values in life. Not even though if they're Christian in title, they may not even have some of the same values that you have, and that makes more of a difference than any title. Okay, second question. Would you yourself date a non-Christian, have dated a non-Christian, or considered dating non-Christian? Start with Florence.
I personally have dated a non-Christian when I was in Melbourne. It was a very emotional roller coaster, I would say. And sadly, I actually nearly moved away from God ever since I started to date him. He was actually born in a Christian family, and they actually used to go to church when he was a kid. But because of family issues, he and his father and the mother got divorced, and then they kind of withdrew from the community and stopped going to church. But he's always passionate about learning new things and eager to understand and gain knowledge of everything, which one thing that I sort of admire him. And when he started his first year in uni, he actually did join a Christian fellowship group and still trying to understand, is there really a God? But he stopped going after he graduated. So he told me like he respected the religion and he wouldn't stop me going to church, which is a good thing, I suppose. But in return, he just told me like, don't force him to go to church or attend any service, because he said like, Christianity is a religion in some ways. But then I kind of corrected him, saying that religion is more on building a relationship with God. And I asked him at least follow me once to actually really, really understand. Because I think like different churches has a lot of different teaching in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then he just kept quiet. But all this while I was just hoping someday he will, go back to church and start believing in Christ again. So it was almost Christmas that time, and then there's an event held by Hillsong Church called Christmas Spectacular. So I thought this was like, it's my chance, And then because the Christmas Spectacular has more on Christmas performances, and there's a few minutes of sharing the gospel. So I invited him, but then it turned out a bit not so good after, because he said like he wasn't comfortable about, the pastor sharing this kind of thing, and then it's always the same, and then how to live a life committing and following or walking with Jesus. So in the end, I agree with what Desmond said. Like in the end, it all comes down to the value that all of us hold so dearly, and what sorts of definition of love is to any of us, because it's very obvious that my definition of love and his definition of love are totally the opposite. Because I remember I was telling him about an incident which happened to me when I was on holiday in Adelaide, where I met this stranger, started scolding and yelling at people inside the tram I'm in. So he was disgusted by people looking on their phones and stuffing their earbuds into their ears and not looking and hearing what's around them. But somehow this stranger just started walking towards me and sat beside me. I was so scared and my hands was like shaking, But I had a very strong feeling that I should talk to him. So he looked at me and wanting to yell at me, of course, because I have my earbuds on. And then, but I actually just, smiled at him. Well, we talked throughout the whole journey, and later on I found out that he just wanted someone to talk to and to hear him out because he's having a very, very bad day and all he has been experiencing is just negativity and all he wanted is just care. So I actually encouraged this homeless person to go to church, and then he told me for so long today he was able to see the light. But one thing that I regretted is that I wasn't able to pray for him. And he bid me farewell and he told me that you had the most beautiful smile and keep smiling and God bless you. And at that moment I almost tear up. And then this such beautiful story, I actually share it with my ex. And then he said like, you are so weird. Why would you even talk to a stranger and also a homeless? You could have just ignored them. There are so many on the street. But I was totally like blank. My mind was just blank because I was so happy sharing this thing. And it's the values that I've been holding up where Jesus, tell us to be compassionate to people, to show empathy and to care for people, whether you're homeless or not. And how could he just call me weird? So we had a huge argument every now and then due to our different definition of love and showing love and care. So, and then I even told him about a biblical commandments about loving our neighbors as yourself and all these things as what the 1 Corinthians 13 verse 4 to 13 says. And then he doesn't believe all that. And we have a totally different point and understanding of love. And he would respect that, but he would never want to imply that on himself because it makes him sick. So yeah, and it's this different value and experiences, it shows exactly what Paul's commandment has made it clear that it is like unequally yoked.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your experience. But yeah, I think it boils down to values that you hold, and a very radical values that Christianity has as well. Desmond, I know that you're married now, so that you're not supposed to date anyone else. But have you, before you were married, dated a non-Christian before, or considered dating a non-Christian at that point of your life? When you were younger, or you don't have the thoughts and views that you have now.
Married is with kids now already,
Yeah.
It's a different phase of life now.
But before that, when you were still single, have you ever thought about it, considered it, or it was something that was never your option?
Well, actually, I went out with I would say I went out with many girls, but I did go out with a few. Some we did go a bit further, but a lot of them I did go out with Christian girls, and also we go out with non-Christian girls just to get to know them. But most of the time, I find that because I know what I'm looking for, and after going out with them for a few times, sometimes it just naturally showed that it's just very different. It's just very different. So just to give an example, I went out with this girl from a Christian family, and I didn't know her before then. She was introduced by a mutual friend. So we went out, and I think the first time that we went out, it was already very near her birthday, and I remembered that I handmade a gift. I'm not very good at handmaking gifts anyway, or cards or things like that, but I just did something simple and gave her a bar of chocolate to go with it. So it was a very, very simple gift, and it was near her birthday. Then I think that was the second time or third time I met her. So I just gave her the gift. I could see from her face, right, she was not impressed. She was really, really not impressed. And after that, because we did exchange messages and photos, she showed me some of the gifts that her friends gave her. They were all very expensive gifts, like handbags and dresses and very nice things. So what that taught me or showed me is that actually not only me, but I think it showed her as well that we were not having the same values, and it was already not. It was already something that both of us we could see is not something that we want to pursue lah.
Right.
So after that, it was quite mutual. It's like I already knew it, and she already knew it. And like when I asked her out one more time and just to test and see what was the response, she totally didn't reply me. And then a few days later, I just texted her on something else, and she did reply. So it was quite intentional and quite obvious lah what she was thinking already, or maybe at least to me lah what she was thinking next. Yeah, so I did, and to me, going out, getting to know whether believers or non-believers is not a problem. It's really not a problem. But I do consider, if let's say the girl that I'm going out with, should I want to go further, that's where I would say that that's more intentional, and that will fall into the dating that in my definitions for more for the sake of marriage. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then now there's within the dating, there's also just going out and getting to know them. Is that romantically or just can be platonic? I mean, just like for friends also, just to get to know them. I have no issues with that. But my question comes in, and would you consider this a romantic partner? And you would lah. I mean, you would have last time you would have just went out on a personal one-to-one, not like with a gang of friends, and just meet them and get to know them. Is it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question. What do you think about Christians who date non-Christians? Like, first of all, is it really a sin? Because there are verses that, like Florence said, unequally yoked. But would you consider, like, let's say you disobey this, it is a sin? Or would you put it on something more neutral? So is either a sin or not a sin? So, but okay, quick answer. What, Florence, yes or no, a sin? And
I think it's always the mentality where you're dating a non-Christian, as what Desmond said, like, are you into a marriage, or are you like testing waters and stuff like that? So if let's say you are walking towards the marriage, then I believe it's an unequally yoked, which is, I wouldn't really say it's a sin, because like it's just say unequally yoked. That's what I feel like.
okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's not like, unless you're saying like you're sleeping around with a non-Christians, and then I think that is committing a sin if you're sleeping with a non-Christian.
Oh yeah, no, that's a premarital sex issue already. But to me, I'm not discussing that far yet. I'm just thinking about is with the dating itself, seeing them romantically, not talking about how far you go within that relationship. But to you, it sounds like your answer is a no. You wouldn't consider it a sin.
I wouldn't consider it a sin.
Yeah, Desmond.
No, I don't think it's a sin. Actually, it's God has given us free will and also at the same time wisdom. So whether you go out with a believer or non-believer or Christian or non-Christian, that's really your free will. I don't see it as a sin, but I would say that God has given us wisdom, and from His scriptures, He has already imparted what He wants to say. So it really depends on how we understand it and perceive it, but it's definitely not a black and white sin. And so I don't think it is a sin to begin with. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If someone who is a Christian, your fellow brother and sister who is a Christian, is dating or planning to date a non-Christian, would you give them any advice, Desmond? Or would you not just it wouldn't be something you bring out with them?
Generally, I will discourage them generally, but over the years of seeing so many things that are around friends that happen, I have also come to realize that my views have changed slightly on this lah. And it's one example is now both a couple that I know, now both of them are Christians. When they started dating, the guy was a Christian. The guy is a Christian. He is a Christian now. And the girl actually converted to Christ, converted and believed in Christ. And she converted fully. I mean, she really knows what she believed in. And she actually came to Christ because she got to know this guy. But having said that, I think we need to look at the case a bit more closely because knowing them, the guy made a stand from the very beginning. So the guy made a stand in the sense that he was very clear that he could go out with a girl, but if they are going to be dating and getting married, so he already had the intention to get married as well, to go out with this girl and getting married. He already laid down some conditions. And one of the conditions is that the girl must come to Christ and at least be baptized. So that is the minimum condition. And also on the girl side, she was seeking. She was genuinely seeking, and along her own life, listening to her own life before she met my friend, the guy, she was actually helped along by many other Christians that helped her shape her views towards Christianity. And when she met the guy, she met, in a sense, the right guy, in a sense that pointed her to Christ lah. And because she was already seeking in the first place, and she was already looking for answers, knowing this guy bring her to church, he actually answered her questions, and she was actually convinced that of the belief. So she is a believer now, and she is asking the right questions of a growing believer. So my views, if you ask me, maybe this a few years back, I would say that I would definitely advise them against it. But having seen this with my own eyes, and this couple, close friends of mine, now I can really see that they really transformed. I mean, the girl and the guy as well, they really transformed, and they what do you call this, is part of their sanctification after they become believers. They made each other better as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would advise, generally I would advise the person, especially if the person does not know him or herself. So like I said in the beginning, if it's going to be marriage, is going to head down to marriage, I need to consider my own direction in life, and whether this person and my direction and this person's direction in life, whether both of us we can gel. It's not to say one will take another person's direction, but it's to say that whether we are heading towards the same direction, maybe on different paths, but whether we can accommodate each other on the same path. It's not necessarily one join on their path, but it might be meet somewhere in the middle, but we are still heading in the same direction.
Yeah.
So I would say that if the person that I'm advising, he knows what he or she is doing and what he or she is like, that means whether he or she knows that he or she can hold firm. If it comes to, because when it comes to emotion, sometimes it's very hard to control yourself, right? So if the person can hold firm and know that, I won't go down this path if this person doesn't meet this condition or things like that, or we really cannot gel the direction, you really have to be prepared to, and the person is prepared to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
I would say go in with your eyes open. Yeah. So I have to look at it from case to case. But generally, I would say I would discourage it, because in most of the cases that I've seen, except for that one case, most of them don't work out. And sometimes the worst thing that can happen is they get married, and after that they get a divorce not long after they get married.
Oh, yeah. So Florence, are you a person who would intervene or advise? Let's say you see a Christian brother or sister dating or planning to date a non-Christian.
I mean, of course, if they come and ask me, then I would just throw them a few questions to let them think. I won't stop them or like support them, but I would just ask them to consider this few questions. So the first one is, what's his or her point of view of Christianity? 2, will he or she stop you from going to church every Sunday or any Christian activities like cell group? Even he or she respect your religion, does he or she make you feel bad for not spending time? The third one is he or her values and aspect of life match or compatible with your Christian value? The fourth one is, when it comes to argument, how is he or she going to react and handle it? Is it with anger or with compassion? And the fifth one is, if you are able to marry this man or woman in the future, what about the kids? Are the kids going to be a non-believer, or are they going to Sunday school with you, Sunday school like church service? And will there be a conflict? And the most critical question to actually really, really think of is, will you walk away from God if you decided to take up this relationship? Because I think as a Christian, we are always asked to love one another as how God has loved us. In John 15 verse 12, if we love a non-believer more than we love God, then that relationship should not be continued. Because in Matthew 22 verse 37, and it's also repeated in Mark chapter 12 verse 30, the greatest first commandment is we need to love the Lord our God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Sometimes loving a non-believer able to make us move away from God without realizing, and that is the dangerous yet risky path to take. So yeah, I'll probably just tell them that.
Right. Only if they ask, right? But yeah, that's a good list. Yeah, especially what happens after marriage, all about the kids. And I've heard a lot of I won't say horror stories, but it's a very sad story where they fight and they prevent them from attending Sunday school. But yeah, I do have people that I know who also allow the kids to go. But it's just sad that I don't know, to me it's just very sad that, let's say, your spouse does not want to go to church with you. I just find that such a different direction is just, yeah. I mean, especially if you really are convicted on what you believe in, you feel sad all the time for your spouse and they don't believe, and you think about the consequence of that eternally. So okay, next question. How would you respond to those because we might discourage them from dating a non-Christian, right? People might say that you're intolerant, you're not open, because we're very modern already. What century is this now? That you discourage Christians to date, to not date people who with other beliefs. So yeah, Desmond.
Yeah, I think this. I think inherently, when it comes to choosing a life partner, right, we are already biased. Whether you are Christian or not Christian, right? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, you'll find some people beautiful that fits, or handsome that fits your profile or what you're looking for and things like that, right? So I think if you're talking about dating and things like that, it's already selective. So when you are selective, you can't be inclusive already. So I think it's
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So because anyway, I mean, if you believe that you can only marry and have one life partner, right? I know some other religions have more. You can have more, but if you're only talking about one person, so you already have been selective. And I'm quite sure that the first bias that everybody think of is like age will be a major consideration.
Yep.
Right? You won't be marrying somebody maybe 10 years younger than you, 20 years older than you, or something like that. I mean, most of the cases you won't, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, of course, maybe there are other reasons that you might want to marry a person who's much more older or much more younger than you, but those are for different reasons, right? But if we honestly ask ourselves, it's already be selective. You can't be all inclusive. I don't see why you can always say you're intolerant to age gaps and you're intolerant to other things already. So so I don't see how this question is different from being intolerant to age gap or intolerant to beauty lines and eye of the beholder and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing. People will have preferences and you can't you can't stop that. And whether that preference is towards, let's say, I want someone to have similar religious beliefs, so that later in life it's easier for me. I don't have to fight so much about it or discuss so much and debate my whole life and feel stressed my whole life because of this.
No, actually, I think it's not so much about fighting, And also, I think that maybe kids, when we talk about like bringing kids to church, whether the kids at least, sometimes I feel those are a bit far. I mean, they are still near, but the immediate question I believe is, how are you going to live your life when you are single and when you are married? How are you going to live your life? Because if we truly believe in the gospel and we understand the implications of the gospel, it permits every aspect of our life. How do you spend your time? How do you choose to spend your time? And that is living your life, right? Even living your life as a single or married, those choices. When you're single, you make it for yourself, but when you're married, you have to make it together with a spouse. And I think that on that basis alone, that values different will already make you go for different choices, and it's already very hard to be as one, united as one. You see, so that's the way I see it. Kids nowadays, not everybody get married will think about kids, seriously speaking. Some people are even thinking about not getting married nowadays. A lot of them are thinking about not getting married, actually, right? So I think kids are still far, but the moment that you get married, the thing is that how do you decide together to keep you all as one? And why are so many people moving apart? Because they don't. I mean, why are so many marriages breaking apart? Is because people don't sit down together and decide together. And because when you need to decide together, you need to have a set of values that you should agree on. I would say you need to agree on everything, but most of the values you need to agree on. And I believe that by really a person who really believes in Christ and understands the implication and the implication and the impact of the gospel on your own life, how it permits every aspect of your own life, then it's a better foundation to make decisions together and keep the marriage together.
Yeah, good. Yeah. What about Florence? Do you have any responses you have at the back of a pocket if someone just say, "Oh, you're intolerant or not open"?
I don't know. Like I literally don't know how to respond that. Like I think because I don't really but as I said, like I wouldn't stop you from doing anything or either supports you. So the choice is yours. I'm not there to like, tell you what to do and what not to do. So yeah. I mean it's your walk with God, it's your choice. And there must be something, as I think it's a bit similar to what Desmond said. There must be something that the person, really, really like that person that we are not able to see. Like maybe the values, the similarities of values that person couldn't find on someone else. And it's only God knows the answer. Like why would they choose that person?
But I think but I feel like Desmond's one, the preference thing, ages or whatever is later. What about economic values? And I mean everyone's gonna have preference in terms of looks, height, I don't know, weight, face. Are you like, I don't know, you will have some sort of preference. And I also think like, well, it's not just religion, but in many aspects you will have some sort of selective people, because you only supposed to have one partner, unless you divorce to you is nothing, then you just marry and divorce, then that's another question. But okay. Desmond, any final thoughts on the topic?
I think I like the words that Florence chose just now on the one about what is the greatest commandment of the Bible, which is to love your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor. So if we choose to follow these two principles, I would recommend to every brother and sister that you also choose somebody that, if you choose to follow this yourself, then you choose a spouse that is willing to do the same thing as well, which is to pursue our God with our heart, our soul, and our mind, and also to love our neighbors.
Right. Thank you, Desmond. And thank you, Florence, for joining me on this podcast. And thank you, listeners, for listening to Can or Not, a podcast where we think and talk about issues we face as Christians and if we can handle them or not.